What we're looking at here is Penstemon hirsutus. Penstemon hirsutus has a few different common names. I call it hairy beardtongue, and that is a funny name. As we go through here, we'll talk about how it gets such a funny name. And I have the stats for it, if you will, up on the screen, just to help make sure we're all talking about the same plant. There are anywhere from 150 to almost 300 different Penstemon species. So we are just talking here about Penstemon hirsutus. So we're going to look at Penstemon hirsutus in every season from seed all the way to when it's an established plant. Now this is not the same as most of my videos that look at an established plant in every season. This is from seed to established. It's a nuance, but it is an important nuance. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is the seed packet. Now it's going to look a little bit like an advertisement for a company. I did get the seeds from Prairie Moon Nursery. I'll give you their link. But here is the seed packet. And now you can see I'm going to open the seed packet and you can get a look at what these seeds look like. So this is one of those packets within a seed packet because the hairy beardtongue seeds are so tiny, teensy. There they are. Teeny tiny. Zoom in, get focused. Okay, so that's the seeds. And what you do with those seeds is you sprinkle them on the soil surface and you don't really cover them with soil. They like to just be sprinkled on the soil surface and that's it. So what you're looking at here is around December of year 1, I sprinkled on the seeds on top of some soil that I had put in these milk cartons. So I cut a milk carton in half, punch a couple holes in the bottom, put some soil in there, sprinkle the seeds on top, and I put them outside. And so what you're looking at here is about a month later, which is January, and you can see it's snowing. And so what this does is Penstemon hirsutus seeds need 60 days, so 2 months, of cold, moist conditions to germinate, so to start growing. So I let Mother Nature do that for me. Some people will use their refrigerator. I just put them outside. And so this is February. So I'm just showing you, yes, 60 days of cold, moist conditions for our seeds to germinate. The netting is there because some naughty little squirrels like to come and dig, and that's not ideal for when you're growing plants. Okay, so we are in March now, so March of year 1. And you can see that now they're already starting to come up. And so what those are coming up right now are called cotyledons. And so they're the first little leaves that you get. They're not considered true leaves. They're just these little cotyledons. Most plants have cotyledons that look something like these. So it's kind of hard to tell one species from another at that point. So here we are in mid-spring, April for me. And you can see they look a lot the same. You're kind of still just looking at what appears to be cotyledons. So not a lot of action in that first bit of time that they are coming up, which is fine. And so next you're going to be looking at about 2 weeks later, still mid-spring, but now we're at the end of April, and you can start to see there's the single set of cotyledon leaves, but now you can see other leaves coming in on top. And already now these look more like Penstemon hirsutus to me. And so here we are now late spring, and now you've definitely got a number of true leaves on these plants. And you can see, to me, what is characteristic for Penstemon species in general is you see the green, but you also see that purplish reddish color. So that will come into play a lot in this video. I find Penstemon hirsutus to be confusing at times, and it has to do with that green versus purplish coloring that she can take on. And so you may notice that these 2 milk jugs were a little packed in. And so here we are still in late spring, and I am showing you that they were so packed in there. They're not even really an inch tall yet, or they might just be an inch tall. And I had decided that I needed to split these clumps apart and put all these individual little seedlings, just spread them out a little bit so that they can get a little bit taller before I put them in the yard. My rule of thumb is usually you wait till they get about 2 inches tall before you put them in the yard. Oh, and look at all those roots on the bottom. I mean, yeah, they're getting crowded in there. And so here I'm just showing you, I've pulled a couple out, tried to untwine their roots. And so you can see that one in the middle has a very long root. And then the ones on either side, the roots are a little shorter, but they still were definitely getting crowded in there. And so here, I was going to do the video of me doing it, but that was going to prove too difficult. So here I have nicely spread them all out, still in the milk crates though, or the milk jugs. And then as time wore on in this particular day, I got more tired and it was getting hot. And so in some of these later containers, you can see I just started taking clumps of the plants and just kind of putting them in these clumps. Which is still more spread out than they were, but you know. Okay, so now we are in early summer, June for me, and you can see that I have decided to go ahead and plant these in the yard. They are definitely not all 2 inches, but they were just getting so crowded and they weren't doing well anymore in those milk jugs, and I was like, you gotta put them out, girl. So we did. So you're going to see 2 locations throughout this video. One location is this one, which is a partial sun location, and the other one is a full sun location. So you're going to be able to see that there is a difference in what Penstemon hirsutus does in partial versus full sun. She'll grow in either, but she looks a little different. So this is now the full sun location. And right now they all look about the same, because they've so far just all been grown in milk jugs together. The milk jug location is a full sun spot. And so they all have these green leaves, which are true leaves. And they all have, there's a little bit of a purplish, reddish hint to them. Maybe along the edges a little, maybe that central vein on them you can see. And I have these all marked by flags because how would I know the difference between that and any of these other little things growing up around it? Okay, this is a month later. This is midsummer, and this is the full sun location. And you can see, oh, okay, wow, doing really nice now. Maybe 6 inches tall already. So in that month, once I got them in the ground, they really took off. Here in this full sun spot, they look mostly green, don't they? Now, that one by the flag, I just zoomed right past it, but that was a tiny little guy. And to the right of your screen right now, there's also a tiny little guy. So they didn't all take off. Some of them sort of stopped a little bit or slowed down. But you will see what happens with those ones too. See, here's another little guy. So here we are in early September. This is early fall time for me. Now, unfortunately, I did not take a specific video of Penstemon hirsutus. I have taken a video of this purple flower, which is a wild petunia. But behind it, you can see my Penstemon. And on the left was that little guy who's now grown up quite nice. And then the 2 Penstemon hirsutuses behind this petunia. Again, I really apologize. They look actually really quite good. So early fall time in the full sun location, they are green. They're still only about 6, maybe 8 inches tall, and it's all just these basal leaves. So that's kind of like leaves that are along the ground, give or take. And so that would be considered first year growth, first year from seed. And again, that way left, you can see one of the little guys is actually doing okay now. Not as impressive as the big ones, but better. So this is the only time you're going to see this location because it's a hot mess. But this is the same day, early fall, and my hand is around the Penstemon hirsutuses in this location. Partial sun location, they're not doing as well here. There's a lot of other stuff growing around, and they're in partial sun, so not quite as well. And here we are now in mid-fall time, back to our full sun spot, and you can see all of them, right? They're nice, big, green. Towards the middle, you can start to see they look a little pinkish reddish along that central vein on each of them, like on the individual leaves, I mean. And they look a little flat, right? Like the whole plant isn't quite as fluffy and high up. Now we're only a couple inches off the ground. And now, okay, I've jumped ahead to January for me, which is midwinter, because this is all that they're doing in this period of time. Fall time, all the way to here, they're just getting flatter and flatter against the ground. But they are in these big basal leaf rosettes, if you will. The flattening comes from all the rain and the snow and just flatten, flatten, flatten. And so here we are again, midwinter, and I'm showing you, yes, snow. Underneath where those green flags are, that's where the Penstemon hirsutus is. So first year growth, for me, made it most of the winter, still green leaves there, but just totally flat. Okay, so we're in March now, and this is year 2, and these are coming up now. Full sun location, early spring. Here they are, and you can see that they're very small, of course. You have to really look where my fingers are to see where the plant is. And the leaves are green, but they're also that along the veins and along the bottom are that reddish purple color again. And this maybe is an inch or 2 tall. Yeah, and this one's a little bigger. You can see here some of those basal leaves are still there from last year, from the first year growth. But you can see in the middle is all of our second year growth. In most of them, that first year basal leaf growth has been lost, meaning it turned brown and it is degrading and disappearing on us. And the second year growth, like with a lot of plants, actually, that second year growth is the growth that's heading up, growing up instead of sort of out. Okay, same day, different location. That last location was partial sun. This is full sun. And you can see these are, half an inch tall, maybe an inch. And you can see the old stalks, kind of, they're not really robust stalks, but they're kind of there from the basal leaves in year 1. And now all these little guys coming up, purplish reddish, right? In that last partial sun spot, they were mostly green. And here in this full sun spot, they're mostly kind of purplish reddish. It actually made me second guess some of my video. I really had to go through closely and be sure I hadn't made a mistake. I have not made a mistake. This is real. As it turns out, Penstemon hirsutus in full sun will have more reddish purplish to the leaves, to that central vein in the leaves when they get bigger, and to their stem as they get bigger, you'll see. And the partial sun locations are a little bit more of the green and less of the purplish red. So here we are again, maybe just an inch tall. You can see some of those big green leaves on the side are basal leaves from the first year growth before, but most of that eventually died away. Okay, so now we're at mid-spring. This is our partial sun location. And in mid-springtime, April for me, mostly green, right? A little of the purplish reddish on some of those stalks or some of those leaves that are kind of pointing straight up there. And, maybe these are 4 inches tall now in mid-springtime. And I'm grateful, ever grateful, that I put flags next to them because until they really get to be sizable and until I, at that time, was less familiar with the plant, I wouldn't know where they are. Now now being more familiar, I don't need the flags, but I'm grateful to have them when I was getting started. So you can watch me weeding, which is lovely, but there's the plant in the middle. And again, in this second year now from seed, mid-spring, they're heading up 4 or 5 inches tall now. The leaves are kind of going up, and you can see the reddish, purplish stems. So mid-spring still, full sun location. I mean, what a interesting, funny looking plant, am I right? Green, but also reddish purple. Next to these plants, I have other native plants that come up as a purplish, and so I several times questioned which plant was which. It became fairly obvious fairly quick. And so on this one, you can see the growth that is heading up as opposed to out. You can really see it here on that plant. And this one here looks maybe a little more green than the other ones. This is a full sun location, but this part of this location gets a little bit of shade, and you could tell that because it's more green. So that's a very interesting thing, I think, about this Penstemon hirsutus, the color variation based on sun. Okay, this is about a week later, full sun location, and 4 inches maybe. And you can see that central vein really is that reddish color or purple. And as opposed to last year, these leaves are really headed up. Last year, you really ended up with little leaves that really went out and stayed basal, stayed low to the ground. With these, you can really see that they're starting to head up. Okay, so that little bit of black plastic there, the previous homeowners had done the thing where you bury like a whole sheet of plastic in a flower bed and then put your plants maybe on top or whatever to try to not get weeds. That only works for, a year or two. So as I take out the non-natives and put in native plants, I'm always pulling plastic out. So that's what that is. So we're still mid-spring, again, about a week from the last video, and you can just see they're more heading up, and they're getting maybe more into the 6-inch range, the ones that are getting tall. And so as you watch these, especially this one I'm about to show you, maybe I'm not going to show it to you, they kind of form this rosette, and I think that's even the word some people use. And so in the second year growth and on, you kind of do get some basal leaves. So this is late spring now. You get some basal leaves along the bottom, and then you get these stalks that come up that will have the flower on them, and they do form sort of a circle, a little rosette. And so I'm showing you here, this is our full sun location, that those stems are really quite pronounced in their reddish purple color. Same with that central vein in most of these leaves. And now, I mean, geez, how tall are these? What did I write down? I said that they're almost like a foot tall. That seems about right. So this is certainly now different from the first year growth. And on some of these, you can tell more than others that little rosette. And the roots on these guys are little rhizomes. So they're not the aggressive spreading rhizomes. They're short little rhizomes, and then they also have fibrous roots. And so that's kind of how you get these rosettes and multiple stalks and stuff, is they all kind of come from a central, or like some rhizomes, short rhizomes. Late spring, this is the partial sun location. Now these guys are quite a bit taller and already showing buds. So I found this consistently. The partial sun locations all seem to put up buds for me sooner than full sun, but they also had fewer stalks. See, all of these only have a single stalk. The stalk is much more green, a lot less purple-red, and the single stalk has the flowers on the top. So it's not quite as filled out and robust as a full sun location, but you still get a stalk and you do still get flowers, of course. And so we're still in late spring. Okay, still late spring, full sun location, windy day. And when I get to the top, you can see that we're getting little buds here too, but the buds are not as far along as in the partial sun spot. And now that you can start to see these stalks that are coming up here in this second year growth, if you look closely at some of these videos, you can see along the stalk how it's a little hairy. It looks a little fuzzy. So that is actually in the hairy beardtongue name. Hairy, that hairy is in reference to the stem. And the name itself, Penstemon hirsutus, that hirsutus, in Latin, that means shaggy or hairy, and that is in reference to that stem again. In fact, humans have hirsutism, which is when people have abnormally more hair growth than normal or something like that. So that's hirsutism, Penstemon hirsutus. It's a hairy stalk. Okay, so we're still, this is 2 days after the last video, same location, and I'm just showing you in 2 days, the buds have become much more pronounced and they're getting more ready to bloom. Some of these will still get a little taller, most of them won't. This will be their height. Same day as the one you just saw. So I take a lot of footage in this particular time period because they're so close to blooming. They're just about there, and it's neat to watch every day as these buds get closer to opening for us. And so there's maybe more than one stalk here. So from the same little, same plant, sending out a couple little rhizomes, you get a couple stalks, I guess, in this partial sun spot, but there's really the one major one. And so here you see these buds, right? None of them are quite opened yet, but they're very close. Very close. 3 days later, because I was like, those babies are going to open. Let's get back in there. Ah, there it is. Open. So that's as open as they get. So it is a tubular flower. As you can see, it looks like a little tube, and that tube is maybe an inch long. And it is closed a lot at the end there, Penstemon hirsutus. That makes it a little bit difficult for bumblebees, and other bees pollinate these guys too, but it makes it a little hard for them to get in, and that is on purpose. When they struggle to kind of get in and struggle to kind of get back out, they get covered in pollen so that they can go pollinate the next flower. So that is a delightful strategy of Penstemon hirsutus to ensure pollination. So as you can see, some of these are just little buds, some are bigger buds, some are nearly open, and some are already open. And so same day, exact same day, full sun location. And, you know, as always in the full sun, you get more of the purplish reddish color to the stalks. And you can see the little buds on top. Am I going to focus on any of them? Yes, maybe. Well, they're the buds are not as, there we go. The buds are not as far along as in the partial sun location. And there they all are. So these are, so this is just a couple days later. We're still in late spring, but just once you get to this period of time, every couple days makes a big difference in how close we are to blooming. So these are maybe 2 feet tall, I might say. They can get anywhere from 1 to 3. So this is the same day in a different part of town, actually near a cemetery. I saw these and I was like, stop the car. There's some Penstemon hirsutus. So these are already open. And you can tell, I thought this was a partial sun location, but those stalks being so reddish purplish tell me this might be actually getting more sun than I think in this spot. It's at a woodland edge. It's a little rocky here, and that's about right for Penstemon hirsutus. It's a plant that can deal with a wide range, I would say, a relatively wide range of conditions, but woodland edges and rocky soils is one you see them in. Here we are in late spring, and I'm going to follow this bee for a little bit, and you can start to see how this flower works a little bit. When you see this bee trying to get in there, getting all the way into that tube to get a sweet treat, and it's a little bit of a struggle to land on the edge there and then try to wiggle all the way in and then get your body all the way back out. And in a little bit, I'll actually talk about some of the mechanisms in that flower. It's very cool. But it's neat to also see in action what's happening here. And of note, it is hard to keep up with bumblebees. They move a lot. Okay, so this name Beardtongue, this thing that his little abdomen's on, people think it looks kind of like a tongue, and it's got some little hairs on it, kind of. Beardtongue is kind of how that Beardtongue name comes about. So we're at the end of springtime, and here's our full sun location, and some of these are just barely opened, and some are not quite there yet. So now our partial sun location, both at my home and across town, have opened flowers. And here in our full sun location, some of the flowers are open already and some are not quite. So some of these might be more like 2.5 feet tall. This plant really can go from 1 to 3 feet, truly. And those full sun spots, they do get tall. And on the one I'm showing you now, so here's some that are open flowers. You kind of get a feeling for that rosette that you start to get. In the middle there, it almost looks flat, right? And there's all these tiny little leaves down there, a lot of foliage, and then coming up all around the edges of this rosette are all these different stalks that will have the flowers on them. And here now, this is 5 days after the last video. And holy moly, look at all these. And they're all open. They're ready for business. So there's a number of checker spot butterflies that use Penstemon hirsutus as a host plant. So a larval host plant means that the mama butterflies will lay eggs on these, and then the little caterpillars will eat the leaves. So in some footage, you might see some of the leaves are not perfect and green and lovely. It looks like they've been chomped on a little bit, and that is actually a good thing. So that would be the larvae of some of these checker spot butterflies. And then other insects too. We tend to think of it as bad. We want these leaves to be perfect. But in actuality, it's a good thing. We want caterpillars to eat these leaves. They won't kill the plant, but they'll eat just enough so they can become grown-ups. And so this is end of spring and the partial sun location. Obviously, some of these flowers are open and doing great. Other ones have not, are still buds, and some, as you can see, one just fell off. Some of them are already done. And here's another one in that partial sun spot that is maybe 9 inches tall, possibly a foot, but more like 9 inches. So, you know, I would say if they had their choice, I suspect they like full sun more than partial, but they will still do okay, right? Okay, so we are calling these established now. I mean, look at these guys, and they've come back the second year. We're calling them established. Mark it. And it's so beautiful. The sun lighting them up from behind. Love it. Now, I do want to say something here, though. What I would like to happen is a pause here on the video. Nope, I just zoomed right by it. I'm going to pause this video in just a second, and I'm going to show you something on these flowers. We're going to talk a little bit more about the insides here because it's amazing. So what happens is you see these are like little tubes, these flowers, and then on the bottom petal, so there's 5 petals, and on the inside there's 5 stamen. The stamen is what has the pollen on them. One of those stamen is sterile. The other 4 are functioning as stamen as we know them. And so of those 5 petals, 3 are kind of on the bottom, and the 3 that are on the bottom, especially that central one, they kind of stick out a little bit, making what looks kind of like a tongue. And there's these little hairy type filament things in there. And again, that gets us beard tongue. And that is what bumblebees and bees land upon. And it's a little bit of a struggle to get past those hairs to get into the flower. And that struggle is kind of, if I'm going to humanize these flowers, that is kind of what they want. They want the bees to wiggle a little bit as they go in and wiggle a little as they come out to pick up pollen and to release pollen, right? And so on the inside of these flowers, and this is what I want you to note. So right here, this shot, on the left-handish side of your screen, that sun is illuminating these flowers beautifully. But then what I also want you to notice, good, I've paused it, thank you, right there on each of these flowers, can you see there's two dark purple, sort of what looks like lines on the inside of the flower? And those are on the inside, and those are two of the stamen. There's two on the other side, and they're sort of circling around in the middle of that tube a little bit, and it sort of creates, I'm going to use a term from the Xerxes Society. They called it like maybe like little hooks almost. And so the bees get in there, and those two little stamen on each side, four altogether, that loop around, they kind of hook the bee in there a little bit, not in like a painful way or anything like that, but it holds them there. See, you can see that again on those flowers. Do you see that on the inside? And so when the bee tries to get out, it kind of squeezes them just a little, and that helps that bee both get pollen and release pollen as it goes in and out of each of these flowers. So the flowers really do want to make a little bit of a struggle here for the bee. So that is super cool. And actually, on the flower on the left there, you can see that those two little purple lines even have two little purple like balls on the top. So that's the end of the stamen where the pollen actually sits. And so the bees have to go past this to get to their sweet treat in here. And so they pick up all this pollen. It's sort of a neat, these hairy beard tongues have a few ways of making the bees work for it. It's a small flower opening. There's that bearded tongue that they have to get past. There's these wrapped around stamens on the inside that they have to squeeze past in and out. It's pretty awesome, let's be honest. And then also in this picture, if you look at the central stem there on the outish, that white luminated part would be the hairy part of hairy beard tongue, because the stems are hairy. And so most penstemons do not have hairy stalks. So that is a helpful identification for Penstemon hirsutus, is that hairy stalk. So you have seen it now, Penstemon hirsutus, hairy beard tongue, all the way from seed, those teensy tiny seeds, all the way through that first year, those basal leaves of first year growth, all the way into the second year. And here we are, established now, beautiful rosettes at the bottom with these 1 to 3 foot stalks with all these tubular flowers on top. Lovely. And with nifty tricks for how to get pollination to be sure to happen, which is awesome. I will also add that in not ideal conditions, some people say that Penstemon hirsutus only lives for 3 or 4 years. That may be true. And then people say, like, otherwise it's perennial, it'll just come back for eternity. That's probably not true. I suggest that after these flowers are done flowering, not to like cut off, deadhead them and like cut everything off, but let them go to seed. Enjoy the cool looking seeds, which I will show you in a future video. And then let those seeds drop to the ground so that more Penstemon hirsutus plants can come up. That way, when any individual plant dies, you've got other ones coming up, do you know? So you can have a continual loop here of hairy beard tongue coming up for you every year. So there you have it, Penstemon hirsutus, from seed to established plant in every season. Plant native, even if it's something with a funny name, hairy beard tongue.